behalf of College Buys, thank you for joining us today. We're happy to have you here for an informative conversation on how institutions can enhance their student support services through AI-driven chatbots, featuring Dave Marciel from San Joaquin Delta College and Chris Uthe from BlackBeltHelp. Your presence and participation are invaluable to these discussions. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A feature, and your questions will be addressed as we go on. So I will now turn it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited to be here. Dave, thank you so much for making some time to jump in and have this conversation. Let me get my screen shared. So let's run through a little bit of an agenda discussion first. So our agenda, just some welcomes and introductions. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. We'll give Dave the floor to tell you a little bit about him and San Joaquin Delta College. And then we will jump through a discussion of sort of how the evolution of and the future of student support has progressed, what we see, what's happening, and sort of how those things go. That'll include a little bit of a demo and then a great discussion between Dave and myself, talking a little bit about how he's found success and how what they're doing, and hopefully find some ways to make your all's lives a little easier as well, or at least give you some inspiration on what you could chase after. For introductions, it's a pleasure to meet everyone. My name is Chris Uthe. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at BlackBeltHelp. I've been in the higher ed industry for about 20 years now, worked everything from help desk at an institution all the way through, working within SIS and ERP companies and some AI companies, and now here at BlackBeltHelp for a little over a year, and really enjoy sort of pushing my life's mission, which is making technology solve problems for us. And that is everything that I want to do in life. And so BlackBeltHelp's mission and sort of goal really fits well with that, as you'll see. So let's keep going here. A little about BlackBeltHelp before we jump over to Dave. BlackBeltHelp was founded about 20 years ago. It was founded by a nonprofit group of institutions that thought that the student help space, that the help desk space was not being served well by the existing players that were out there. They were frankly too expensive and not providing the sorts of services that they needed. BlackBeltHelp really focused in on providing that sort of call center solution for a while, and then discovered that software can make their lives easier, and in the process discovered that software could make their customers' lives easier as well, and started blending into all sorts of software solutions. These days, BlackBeltHelp has about 150 partner institutions, and we serve just over 4 million students with 1 million interactions a year. And we do that with a combination of both live people, AI solutions, lots and lots of software backing up our live folks. It's our mission to tear down the barriers that all of our students have to finding success. So we're happy to do that both in an IT area as well as in a full student services area. Some of the community colleges that you may be familiar with that we work with. So just sort of an idea. Of course, we have San Joaquin Delta College on that list, as well as a bunch of others, both in and out of California. And I'm going to hand it off to Dave for an introduction of himself. Dave.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Marciel. Got about 30 years experience in IT through various large corporations, primarily in the private sector. And I moved over to the educational space about 1.5 years ago here at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton, California. We support basically several thousand. I think it's over 25,000 students here at Delta, several thousand online, with I think about 5,000 to 7,000 at a given point on campus. We've got 3 different campuses. We have the primary campus here in Stockton, and then we also have campuses in Mountain House and also down in Manteca, the farm down there. Basically, we do have a very large and culturally diverse community here on the campus, and we have a number of students from, like I said, a variety of backgrounds. We have, people who are the first generation in their families to come to college. We have several, a very large adult population, veterans, whole gamut. And one of the roles here is to help provide as many services as possible to the students to help them achieve success. And one of the programs that we do have here is basically it's a student tech loan program where we offer up laptops and when available hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots for the students to basically provide them with technology for their remote purposes and make sure that they do have the equity in technology to achieve their success in the education space. And one of the needs that we had was because of our large population, we did have a need. We've got a small student tech squad. We call the Mustang Tech Squad. We're the Delta College Mustangs. And the Mustang Tech Squad, I've got 6 students, and we have very limited hours per week for those students. And we basically needed some assistance to provide support. So we needed to go out and find an organization that could help meet the needs of the students for support. And BlackBeltHelp was able to step up and help us with that. And I'll turn it back over to Chris, but want to kind of give you a brief and we'll kind of get into more detail of how that whole partnership transpired over the last year and a half.
Thank you, Dave. That's awesome. How many, if you don't mind me asking, how many Wi-Fi hotspots are you guys managing?
We're managing about 750.
That's wild. So you're making sure that 750 people have internet wherever they need it to make sure that their
Yes.
higher ed goals come true.
Yes, correct. And we've got about 1,400 laptops that we have deployed, so a large number there as well.
Absolutely. So the way that BlackBeltHelp can help the problem that Dave's talking about, sort of saying, hey, how do we, with this large of a student population or a student population at all, how do we provide that support that we really need? How do we get the students the questions that they need? Especially important when you look at the fact that 60% of students are unaware of the full scope of services that are being offered at their campus. Many people just don't know what's available to them and how to get that help, right? And how to jump from office to office to get that help, frankly. First year students, I can speak from experience. I was a first year, first time, first family student. I was the first in my family to go to college, first generation student. And so the overwhelming feeling of, some of those watching some of your peers know what to do and know where to go, and you just going, I have no idea. This is completely alien to me, right? Especially when we're talking about things like Bursar's office and records and what does this office do that that office doesn't do, and all of those sorts of things, right? Um, it's no wonder then that 55% of our undergrad students in the US identify as first gen, and out of those, 1 in 3 students, um, first year students, they don't advance to the sophomore year. And that's a stat that really pulls us down, right? That's an awful, awful thing to think about. To add on to that, only 60% of our college students who enroll earn a degree within 8 years of graduating high school. So again, either it's taking a really, really, really long time, longer than 8 years, or we're not finishing, right? And so we're seeing our educational mission sort of stall out. And a lot of that has to do with just figuring out how to do the day-to-day thing that we're talking about. Where do I need to go? What do I need to do next? How do I recognize the hurdle that's in front of me and jump it? BlackBeltHelp's aim is to sort of give you a single place to identify and jump those hurdles, right? Sometimes you need multiple things. Sometimes you only need one thing for your students. In Dave's case, we're really helping out with IT. But in other institutions' cases, we're handling full student services. So the first place that they go and the first phone number that they can call, or the first chatbot that they hit, or the first text that they send can be to BlackBeltHelp. And if we can't answer their question, we're at least going to be able to ask enough questions to understand what the problem is, document it, get a ticket created, and get it moved to the right people. So no more jumping from office to office trying to find the right person at the right time, right? No more playing phone tag with an office only to find out, hey, I called the wrong office. And even though it took 24 hours for them to get back to me, I now have to start all over again with a different office, right? We call this the campus hazing maze, and we hate it. And so putting it all in one place makes it easier for our students to get what they need. They know where to start, and they know that they're going to get an answer. How do we do that? through solutions and services. So the thing that makes BlackBeltHelp different from other providers that I think is very important is that most other places have either the left side or the right side of this particular infographic, right? They're either going to be a technology company, they're a software company, they have AI, they might have a chatbot, they might have texting, they might have some other things. What they won't have is the human support network, the live people on the other side, right? And as Dave's experienced, and we're going to get into a little bit here, once our agents are trained, the amount of volume and calls that they can handle and take off of your plate at a fairly affordable rate is impressive, and it opens your team up to do other things. And it really we work hard to become, because we're only higher ed and we're not other areas, we work hard to become an integral part of campus. We want to know what's going on campus. We spend a lot of time talking about events that are going on, things that might cause bumps and calls. Hey, if you're migrating from this thing to that thing, we want to know about it. We get involved. We want to have hands-on so we know how to talk your students through it, or faculty and staff as well, for that matter. Being able to provide both sides of this infographic, excuse me, both the software and the people to back it up, means that when you're talking to our chatbot and our chatbot runs out of the answers and it can't answer your question, it's going to connect you to a live person who can answer those questions. Same with when you call in, maybe we can automatically reset your password over the phone after verifying your identity through an automation, right? Awesome, you got what you need, you're on your way. But if that's not the case and you need more help, there's always a person behind the phone ready to answer the phone and get you help. Those are the things that really matter to make sure that as a call center company, so to speak, which we're really not, we're more of a technology company with a call center backing. Our goal is not to frustrate our users. Our goal is not to slow them down. Our goal is to get them the information and the answers to their problems as fast as we can with the highest satisfaction rating, right? We're not like calling a credit card company where they're trying to slow you down and, you know, hey, listen, if you just would hang up, that would make them just as happy as if you got the answer, right? Instead, we're out here trying to make sure that your students are getting their answers and getting over the hurdles in their educational journey. How do we do that? Besides the tech and the people, we spend a lot of time on our integrations and we're super proud of them. We integrate with everything from your CRM all the way through your learning management system and student information system, and then your ITSM system, as well as your IAM system and your MFA system, and your kind of goes on, right? Because there's a lot of different things that your students have accounts in. And some of these things have the data that we need to answer level 0, level 1 questions, right? Everything from a CRM situation saying, hey, did you get my application through an LMS with what were my latest updated grades, to an SIS of, you know, when is my aid, what was my aid level and what's my balance, all the way into ITSM, which is, hey, I need help. Can you reset my password or create a ticket to help me, you know, get my laptop loaner set up? Those integrations and being able to do that in sort of a very integrated and streamlined fashion from either the technology side or our human services side means that things move at a really rapid pace on your campus, and we interact very seamlessly with you. So this is sort of a big, silly menu of things that we help with on the IT side. And as Dave can sort of speak to, you know, a lot of these things we spend a little bit of time getting trained on, and the few times that we need them, it's awesome to be able to offload those to a completely different team, right? And to know that it's being taken care of in the exact way that you expect it's going to be taken care of, especially when it comes to the high frequency items, password reset and things like that, where it's just, hey, you know, we've got our standard procedure. We trust that BlackBeltHelp is going to go through and get that ID verified and get that password reset at the right time. So Dave, I want to slow down for just a little bit of a second here. Tell me a little bit about, on this big menu of things, tell me a little bit about what you guys utilize the most and sort of your experience with some of these things, if you don't mind.
Sure, Chris, thank you. So primarily, and like you had mentioned before, a lot of it's password reset. You know, I just forgot, I don't know how, or first-time users, right, where they're new students and they've just worked their way through the system. They've got a new account, and for whatever reason, they're having some trouble there. So that is a very large portion of our calls. However, one of the nice things about it is, you know, we've all been students at one point or another, and I'm sure some of us, like myself, are procrastinators. and you're working on a project. It's 11 o'clock at night. You're on the clock trying to finish something for our first class in the morning, and you're stuck on a Microsoft issue. Okay, how do I do this in Excel, or how do I, create this Word document or PowerPoint presentation? Having 24/7 support, for example, is, I think, very critical. And BlackBeltHelp answers that call for us. We are not a 24/7 shop by any means. And that goes not just for the student population when it comes to IT support, but even for our admin. We're very lean staff here. So, we've got normal business hours. And unfortunately, if you're on the administration side, I may get a phone call at night from an executive for some help. Of course, I'm going to help them. But our students they're kind of out in the cold. What are they going to do? Well, this provides an excellent solution for them. Okay. And if it's even a situation that Black Belt is not able to assist with, we do have an escalation path. So, for example, their loaner computer just died. Well, that's not something you can fix over the phone, but it gets escalated. And then I make sure that our tech squad does reach out the next day to those students to provide them assistance. And if we need to swap out a machine or help them with that hardware device, we're able to do so.
That's awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about the way that students engage? I know the 24/7 is, especially when we get into those after hour support moments where students are possibly in a little bit of a panic.
Mhm.
Um, it just becomes a critical moment in your educational journey. Hey, can I finish this thing or can I not? How can I get unstuck, right? So can you
Right.
tell me a little bit about how your students are typically engaging? Is it are you seeing a lot of phone calls? Are you seeing some use of AI and chatbots in those areas? What's their
It's a lot.
preferred sort of methodology given your student population?
I think a lot of it actually, Chris, is with the chatbot. There's a lot of questions that are asked of that, and one of the things I want to touch on is we did a lot of work early on with the Black Belt Health team, we, to basically train the chatbot to make sure that the questions that we felt the students would ask would be able to be answered. I mean, we did everything. We even asked, where do we get a ham sandwich? We just make up some silly things. We really kind of put it through the rigors because all that work at the beginning paid off. And I know we'll talk about it probably later, Chris, but there's some information that shows how many contacts came through in the last year through Black Belt Help, and that's basically very critical to ensure that those number of contacts were answered. There were students that reached out for assistance that otherwise we'd not have been able to provide based on our staffing resources or time of day. So I think the chatbot definitely is the primary contact mode. But then again, if the chatbot is not able to assist, it immediately then offers the solution to transfer over to the agent. And then hopefully the agent's able to provide that support that they're needed. And once again, if they're not, we're here as kind of the third line of defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you seeing, I know that you guys have a varied student demographic on campus. Are you seeing happy and satisfied folks from all of those demographics using the chatbot, or do you see a lean towards one demographic or the other?
I don't really see any particular breakout like that. And it's interesting. I was actually having some conversations with the tech squad this morning, and actually over the last week, saying, "Hey, give me some feedback." And what's interesting is there's not a lot of it, and I interpret that as, well, no news is good news, really.
Yeah.
A lot of times, really, when people reach out, it's their complaints, and you're going to have those here and there. That's normal, but for a majority of the cases, just it's silent. So that means that, in my opinion, what we're doing here is working. We're providing the necessary support to the students that is required.
Yeah, in our line of work, no news is always good news. That means they got the solution, they moved on, and they didn't think twice about it, right? Which is the important
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to move forward here. Um, so the way that BBH looks at this um, is sort of looking at the combining the lowest cost of delivery um, while trying to simultaneously put together something that improves the student engagement and satisfaction and provides that critical 24/7 that we're talking about, right? I think it's really important that we consider the fact that, you know, the technology and sort of modalities of how a student engages with the office is rapidly evolving, right? A chatbot a few years ago may have been sort of a novelty and now has become the preferred way of a student asking questions. They want to start at the chatbot level, right? They want to self-serve if at all possible. They don't want to wait for another person, and those types of things. And then if you sort of follow the data that we've been collecting over the years, the ability to use chat instead of picking up the phone and calling has become a really big deal for folks. To be able to type it and sort of wait and get the response and do it in a in a non-real-time manner, in a quasi-real-time manner, has really become important to students. They have other things going on. They're trying to get an answer while they're in the middle of doing something else, right? Essentially, we're multitasking instead of having to sit down at our desk and pick up the phone and make the call and try to get an answer, right? So as we build across all of those areas, our goal is just to get those students the answers they need and then free up as much staff time as we possibly can. So now we're going to have our first poll of the presentation, which should be popping up for you right there. Thank you. We would love to know what your institution's biggest challenge around support services is. All right. So I wanted to quickly address, we had a couple questions come in, one in chat here that I wanted to address. We have Manny at Peralta Community College. Thank you so much. We use SSO where students log in and land on a student apps dashboard. Yep, absolutely. If your product has been implemented in similar colleges, how your product integrates with the SSO, that's an awesome question. And student dashboards, and then any real world implementations and benefits. So that's an awesome question, Manny. Thank you for throwing it in there. We give you the opportunity to put the chatbot where it belongs and where you'll get the most interactions. The chatbot, as we'll look at here in a little bit, especially, can be integrated in really awesome ways into your SIS system and your CRM and those types of things that we mentioned but haven't really seen. In a situation where somebody is signing on, we could use those single sign-on credentials to log you in, essentially, to know your identity and then be able to pull personalized information. So imagine a world where you have your sort of tiled out different apps that they can launch from your SSO launch. And you've also got the chatbot there, and they can ask the questions and get integrated answers to avoid even having to jump into some of those applications. I will say that our most implemented areas are either on public websites or within student portals. So whether you're using, a standalone student portal or one that comes with your SIS, a lot of folks embed the chatbot there, just as a way to, instead of chatbot is in a lot of ways has become the final form of a really good search, right? Because instead of asking your question and finding a page that might have the answer on it, you're asking your question and you're getting the answer to that instead, right? You're avoiding having to even navigate to the page. And so that is sort of what the default is becoming for especially the traditional student group is, hey, if I need something, I'm just going to ask the chatbot because it's either going to know the answer to the question or it's going to know where I should go. And so they're sort of skipping over site search and they're sort of skipping over a lot of the menus and just saying, hey, I'm just going to stick my query into the chatbot and I'm going to get what I need. And so a lot of folks are looking at it from that standpoint as well. Another place that we see a lot of, and I think Dave, this goes for you guys too, is the self-help page or the IT, how do I reset my password page. If I can pop the chatbot open and do that by going through the identity steps and getting my password reset or my MFA reset, or at least getting walked through the process of using the self-service password reset tools, that becomes a really big way of sort of helping students along as well. Manny, hopefully that answered your question. If not, ask some clarifying ones, be happy to keep discussing. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time, Dave, and have you tell me a little bit about what these numbers mean to you, and I'll run through them, but really the benefit that you're seeing here and the value that they're creating at Delta. So when we look across the stats, the chatbot at Delta answered 94.2%, let's say, 94% of the questions thrown at it, which means that all of those questions, matched a question and got an answer. And when we look at the number of inquiries that were resolved by the bot, meaning that we didn't escalate and we didn't need additional human help with, that's over 18,000 questions, inquiries that the bot basically handled. We had an 18 and change percent transfer to agent rate, which means in 18% of the cases, the user asked the chatbot questions or got to a point where the chatbot didn't know the answer and needed to transfer to an agent to get them help. When that happened, either through chat or through phone, whichever way they decide to interact, we had a 38-second average speed to answer. So there is 38 seconds between saying, hey, I'm going to need a human here, and I have a human available to talk to me. If we keep going down that rabbit hole, we have an 85% first contact resolution, which means the first person that answered the phone and we talked through, or the first person that picked up that chat, we actually resolved the issue. We didn't need to escalate it. We didn't need additional help for that student. In a single call or chat, they got what they needed in order to solve that problem and move on. And then a 93% service SLA. So Dave, tell me a little bit about what these mean to you and what it would look like if some of these things were not as big as they are.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so obviously the biggest one is the 18,000, almost 18.1 inquiries resolved by the bot. I want to point out that this partnership we have with BlackBeltHelp is 100% only supporting our student population with inquiries. We do have our own IT help desk support for staff and faculty administration on campus, but by having this partnership, those 18,000 inquiries would have come through the student tech squad. And again, I mentioned earlier, I only have 6 students. They're limited to a certain number of hours a week. And on top of manning our information desk at the student service center, on top of imaging machines, cleaning machines, prepping, deploying, maybe going on campus to meet students to assist with physical hardware issues, they would not have been able to support those. And that's that many inquiries that would not have, that would have been a challenge for the students to overcome. So, that's huge for us. And we are still inundated, but again, that's just, I have no words to describe how helpful that is. I'm very thankful for that.
In a world where it never slows down, it's just a
Yes,
question of how many people you need to keep your head above water, and this is cutting that number down for you, is what I'm hearing.
absolutely. Yeah, we would need a staff of probably 100 just to deal with that.
Awesome. So Dave, before we keep going, one of the things that's not in here that I want to talk about really quick is just the average session length, which is about 27 minutes worth of chatbot conversation. How many conversations would your team be able to have at 27 minutes? We're talking about, a serious sort of, a serious amount of calls.
Mm-hmm.
That's only, you're only going to cover 80 calls a day, with your 6 students, assuming they're even working 8 hours, which they're not, they're 6, right?
Correct.
So
And yeah, yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Chris.
no,
Absolutely. So, and those 6 students, again, that's over 5 days. So I'm lucky to have 3, maybe 4 students per day at various times. So it's not like I've got all 6 at one time every day of the week. There are days sometimes that I may be down to 2. Unfortunately, there were days where I had no assistance because obviously, students they're here school first, finals, right? They got tests, they've got projects they got to work on. So of course that comes first. I'm not able to make it in a particular day. So again, without the student help, without the support of BlackBeltHelp, our students would be lost without that kind of support. So it's been very helpful, and I know that the students are very thankful for it too, because they're able to engage the students physically here, and they hear the feedback. And again, a lot of it is, well, they're able to help with this, but again, I've got a problem with the hardware, or I need the hotspot, or I've got a problem with that, right?
Yeah,
That needs to be hands-on.
absolutely. I wanted to ask really quick about the handoff
Mhm.
aspect. So when they do get to that moment of, hey, I need the hardware, I need something else, how is the handoff in your opinion?
It works very well. We have a process where basically the escalations come through. I'm copied on them, but they go straight through to the tech squad, and we have um, an email. So we make sure that all the techs have access to it. So whoever's working that day can go ahead and reach out to those students. That's pretty much the first priority. So coming in the morning, make sure that those emails are being answered, because those sometimes are coming over from either the night before or maybe first thing at morning. We want to make sure those students are up and running.
Absolutely. Awesome. And then one question on sort of the 18,000 number is
Mhm.
awesome to see. But are you seeing trends during peak academic times? Are you seeing sort of spikes during that start of semester registration type
Absolutely.
situation?
Yes, for sure. Start of the semester, I'm sure everybody on here that supports IT, whether it's student population or just on campus, it's a very busy time of the year. Actually, even in between our sessions, it's very busy for us as well, prepping for uh, getting the devices ready for the students to go out there. But the first about 3 weeks of the semester are very brutal for the team, and it's all hands on deck, making sure that we're all are here on our scheduled hours, and making sure that we are available for those students.
Awesome. And do you feel like Black Belt Help provides that sort of burst capability during those
Yes.
times?
Yes, for sure. And again, you guys have been a great partner, because one of the things that we make sure that we've got a really good open relationship, to make sure that you guys know our calendar, when are our breaks, when are our holidays, when we have special things going on campus, any issues that are going on technologically here on the campus that might have an impact to our students. We make sure that we have an open dialogue, so that we're always on the same page.
Yeah. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier. I want to just retouch on the effort that it took to get the chatbot up and running. And I know you talked a little bit about how you really put the work in up front, which is entirely true. Be a, what kind of effort did it take you and the team to really get ready for and assess that and get it rolling? And then what kind of effort do you put in sort of regularly after that?
Basically, at the beginning, it was, I mean, because we're starting, I don't want to say from scratch, because you guys definitely have the experience, right? You had an idea of some of the things that were going to be asked, and as we started to train the chatbot, we made sure to have our student workers go through and just start, banging away at the keyboard, start asking questions, seeing, where can we kind of pivot to make sure that those questions are going to be answered properly. We don't obviously want to send students off in a wild goose chase. Again, we are primarily working with you for IT, so we don't provide information on financial aid yet, or academic services, but we do make sure that we have information pointing to where they can reach out to those particular departments on campus. So we are kind of funneling that direction. Um, but yeah, it's it did take it was probably a good month worth of going back and forth. As far as going forward, in fact, one of the things I was like, talking to one of the techs this morning, he's saying, it'd be nice if we had this. So we still continue to get that feedback, and it's something that we'll be talking about, probably this week, to see if we can add some additional support.
Absolutely. Thank you for that very much. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate it. So let's keep going here. So when we talk about EduBot, chat, and voice, we're talking about chatbot, but we're also talking about voice automation and voice bots. Voice AI is kind of a weird subject because we've, had quasi automation things for a while, and now we're really dipping into AI providing more and more help. But I wanted to just do a quick run over of, what EduBot really means and what it does. So generative AI powered by a large language model. This is actually something that we're really excited to be launching yet in quarter one of 2025. So right now we are a curated content model, which is what Dave is familiar with. And that month of time that Dave spent is really an investment in his future of saying, hey, we've curated all of this content. We know the questions, we know the answers, we're going to put them all together. One of the things that we recognize as a company is that level of investment in time is a trade-off. It comes from somewhere, right? Dave's team was already underwater. Where are we getting that amount of time, right? And so the generative piece for us is not a shiny bauble of new technology, although it is really cool. And I'm a total nerd, so I nerd out on it all the time. But really what we implemented it for was to reduce the turn-up time and the maintenance time. Um, we know your bot needs to evolve consistently. So, especially, IT bots have a lot of things that stay the same. But if you're answering questions about your academic situation, that changes every so often, right? And it's not static. Even in IT, it's not static. How you connect to a network might change. The tools and pieces may not be the same from year to year. You guys, we migrate, different tools that we use. So in that case, a lot of work goes into the setup and the maintenance of it. And that's where generative AI for BlackBeltHelp really comes in strong. We are using it to index and find information and store that away. And then we're not using generative AI in the traditional sense of saying, hey, you've been trained generative AI model on, you know, millions and billions of things. Go tell us the answer that you already know. We're actually just using it for its language interpretation and generation skills. So we're saying, hey, here is the question. Here is some data that we pulled out of our database that we've stored that our institutions have given us. So we've probably indexed your website, all of your KBs, your student handbooks, things like that. Here's some information. Generate an answer to this question using the information that's relevant, but don't go outside of this information, right? So when Delta adopts generative AI in the future, they'll be able to say, hey, here is the scope of information that we want that chatbot to sort of pull from. And if it's outside of that, we're still okay with saying, hey, we don't have the answer to that. Let's get you to a human that can answer that question, right? There are limits to that technology. And in higher ed, it's critical that we say that we don't know the answer when we don't know the answer. A wrong answer is worse than no answer. Because of that, we've spent a lot of time making sure that all of our data is stored securely and independently. So again, when you use generative AI, it can be either exciting or scary or a little bit of both. But we're not generating using off-the-shelf models. This isn't like a shady wrapper with OpenAI, right? Like we're not just passing your data off to another big third-party company. We're hosting that model. We own it. We own all the data going in and out of it. Your data will never be shared with any other institution. There'll never be any training on your data. Those sorts of things are important to higher education. We need to have those guardrails in place. Key feature number 2 is the integration, and we're going to take a deeper look into that as well. And we talked a lot about live human transfer. And then the multimodal support, whether it's through your website, whether there's SMS messaging, whether you need to pick up the phone and call, however your students want to communicate is how we want to provide them support. We'll talk a little bit about multi-language support and then that institutional maintenance, right? As Dave has said, they don't have to do a lot to maintain it. There's a little bit that goes on. For curated content, BlackBeltHelp is unique in that we have a data team that watches, monitors, and sort of prompts you when something needs to change. But generative AI takes care of a lot of that burden as well. So that will be very exciting. I'm going to jump in, Dave, unless you have something else that you wanted to mention ahead of time. I'm going to jump in and do a little live demo of the chatbot.
Please.
All right, let me share a different screen. This one. Okay. So this is one of our testing areas for just a very generic chatbot. This chatbot's name is Cub, and I'm not going to run you through all of the boring parts of a chatbot because a chatbot is kind of a chatbot as a chatbot these days. But the things that are unique that I want to point out as far as things that we really spend a lot of time on, these chips, as well as any menu items that you see in our chatbots, are all very customizable and unique to both the institution and the time of year, optionally. So we know when we need to provide, the chip that says, hey, how do I get my 1098T, right? so that we give your students the shortest path into the data that they need. Our bot, of course, can handle things so our bot handles questions in about 4 different ways. The first of which is curated content that we talked about. So in Dave's case, hey, how do I connect to Wi-Fi? This is not Dave's answer because this bot is based on Columbia University's data, one of our other customers. So to learn about Columbia Internet and Columbia-based housing, here's our wireless network access page. We've got a very detailed response. This is what we call curated content because we're using an NLP engine to match that intent and that query to a predetermined answer. So Dave has 100% control over this answer. He can change it to anything he wants, and he knows that it's never going to be anything different. This becomes really important when you get into things like how do I apply, what are our policies on certain things. We don't prefer at that point for any kind of generative AI to muck about with the answer on those things, right? Like how do I apply is how do I apply, and our marketing department has a very specific answer for that, and that's what it needs to be, right? So in that case, curated content is really important, and that's one of the reasons why we continue and will always continue to have curated content within our chatbot. You can see that I can thumbs up and thumbs down things here, likes and dislikes. Optionally, I can also provide some feedback. This is perfect. Or I could tell the system, hey, this isn't actually the question that I asked. This isn't what I needed to know, or this didn't really answer the question, or as we see a lot, it answers the question, I just don't like the answer, right? Which is, hey, you can't do that. So I've left the thumbs up. Now I can ask my second type of question. My second type of question is really like a multi-step or flowed question, where we're going to do something like reset my MFA. Reset my MFA is going to MFA in this case is going to ask me for my email. And once I click submit, it's going to connect me with the person, with a live agent, and it's going to go ahead and start the process of resetting my MFA. Another way that you could use that flow type of question is, hey, do I need to ask you some clarifying questions? Do I need you to verify where you are or what you're doing? Are you a freshman, sophomore, junior? Those types of things, right? So that's the second type of question where we've got multiple sort of paths and multiple answers depending on different pieces of data. The third type of question is probably one of the more exciting ones to me, which is an integrated question. We're going to ask a question and we're going to go in and find the user and find an answer that's specific to a user. So in this case, if you get my FAFSA, because I'm applying to this institution. And it's going to come back and it's going to say, hey, you know what? I would love to reach into Slate in this case and find whether or not we got your FAFSA. Can you just enter some information for me so that I know who you are? So I'm going to enter my demo information here. And once I do that, it's going to reach into my CRM. It's going to figure it out. It's going to say, yes, your financial aid award application is accepted. We've gotten your FAFSA. Note that your packaging requirements completed status is no. So, hey, we need you to do more for this. Excuse my demo data here, but your packaging requirements are no. So again, we're going to go pull data out of that CRM, but we're also going to wrap it in all of the information that you need. And we're going to take into consideration your next steps as a student or potential student, right? Just because the financial aid is in doesn't mean that I'm done. I may need to then also do some additional things for that. I'm going to go ahead and launch a new window. Part of the other things that are available that are really important are the CSAT survey scores. So I can leave a rating, I can enter some feedback and hit submit, and then I will have, as an administrator in the back end, I'll have access to all of those different surveys. I can also download my transcript as a student. So if I relaunch this and I ask a question that is really IT relevant, I just say, hey, I need to reset my password. In this case, we've done some work to do some integration, and we're going to do that user verification again. But this user verification is going to go back, and it's going to go into our SIS, and it's going to validate who I am. And this may be a variety of things. It doesn't need to be these 3 questions. Sometimes it is a variety of things, right? 4 different questions or whatever it is. Whatever meets your security policies is the real answer here. And we'll work with our institutions to make sure that these meet those. So after I've gone in and verified who this user is, I'm then going to actually, in this case, reach into Entra ID and generate a one-time use password. So as you can see here, the chatbot says, hey, I've generated a one-time use password for you to use. Here's the password. You can log in and play. You can use it to log in place of your normal password to log in here. So click here, enter that password. I have 10 minutes to do so. And as soon as I log in, it's going to force me to enter a new password, right? So using all native Entra ID tools, I've just sort of shortcutted the process here. I've validated the identity. I've given them a one-time password. It will expire. If it expires, it goes right back to the old password, right? So nothing there is different. But they've also been added to a security group that forces them to reset their password when they log in. So they use that one-time password, they set a new password, and then off they go because we know who they are. So this sort of automation, same thing with, you could do the same flow with MFA and say, hey, I want to remove my MFA things. As long as we can validate your identity, we can do that programmatically for you, so you don't have to wait for somebody to help you with that. Those types of things are really important to us to make automated and sort of move forward without help. Same for things like, what is my balance? As a student, if I want to know these questions, you owe $0 to the institution. I was already logged in. I had verified my identity up here. So it didn't ask for my identity again. It just went out. It went into my SIS. It pulled out my balance and it gave me the answer. These are the sorts of things that really sort of move the needle for students. The final and last thing is those generated questions and answers from generative AI, and that happens when we don't have a curated content question and answer, but instead we want to pull and generate an answer out of content that we've brought in, and that looks just like generative or just like regular curated content. It just happens to get the answer from the content that it has. I'm going to jump really fast to the back end here of the chatbot, and this is sort of that control panel that we've talked about a little bit that gives you some of these insights. Everything from how many questions have been asked and how many questions per session, questions per day, and intents. And if we jump into the question explorer, we can really dig into like, here's the Azure AD password reset question. If I wanted to see every single conversation where somebody reset their password, I could do that really quickly and easily. Anywhere I see a little eyeball, that means I can just click and open that transcript. Hey, here it is, reset my password. Here's the user verification. Because this is a demo environment, we have it spitting out the entire text. In a production environment, that would actually be redacted. So any integrated answers will be redacted so that even if you have access to this interface, you can't see what the answer was. Things like performance and CSAT reports are all here. An entire conversation history of every conversation that your chatbot's ever had. The status of whether they were closed or transferred to an agent. So if you wanted to just look back and say, hey, let me see the last 10, 15, 20 conversations that were transferred to an agent. I just want to see what was asked and why we got to that point. You can easily do that. Bot training lets you control, questions, see unanswered questions, add answers to them if you want to curate an answer to them, see what has been trained in bot, things like that, and then also manage the content that builds into your generative AI bot. That is like the fast and sort of dirty tour of the chat bot. Dave, what areas do you use that I didn't call out here?
It's primary at that portion right there, and then I think it was the question explorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are diving in and sort of seeing, hey, these questions are being used, and this is the context of them. Let's make sure that these are the things that are being asked at the right time.
Correct.
Awesome. So Dave, I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to just you and me have a couple of questions before we get to an open Q&A. Do you have a sense of what measurable improvements you've seen in student satisfaction? Are your students are you getting feedback? I know we talked about no news is good news, but are you getting feedback in any situation where they're saying, hey, listen, we're getting the information that we need? Is that feedback coming back in a positive way?
Yeah, we're like I said, we're one of the things I'm obviously kind of a couple steps removed from the entire process. And that's one of the reasons why I had been kind of polling the tech squad, and we're really not getting a lot of feedback from it. Again, it's we're seeing it come through. Obviously, it's working, right? But the students are just not engaging us directly. Um, I kind of I look at it like this: with IT, we're kind of like the utility company, right? You don't call them up in the morning and say, "Hey, thanks, my toaster worked today on my microwave, whatever." You only call when your power's out and your food's going to go bad, right?
Yeah.
So again, kind of the whole news is good news. So as long as we kind of keep that ship sailing in that course, it's very satisfactory to the services that we're providing.
Awesome. So I did want to ask, I know you guys have um, a diverse student population.
Mhm.
You Did you think that you would see adoption of the chatbot across all of those, especially, when you get into like my age generation and older, and not to call myself out as old, but it is what it
I got you
is.
beat.
Yeah, I went to college long enough ago that I was running from table to table in the quad to do my registration. So,
Same
um,
here.
those are the things, that we remember. And so
Yes.
to have it all in one place, did you get pushback from those types of student demographics, and what was sort of the aha moment when you knew that it was providing that service?
No, actually, when we first brought this online, one of the things we actually at the beginning of the semester we had Mustang Week, and I had a table out there with one of my other um, coworkers, and we were basically kind of selling the whole idea of the tech squad. Hey, if you need some tech support, you need a device, you can come get a loaner equipment. And by the way, you can probably see the behind me. I've got the lanyards hanging over my shoulder there. That's it's got the BlackBeltHelp number on there. We were passing those out and telling people, hey, we got 24 by 7 support. It's students helping students. And we got a lot of really like, wow, that's great. People were really excited about that. So they knew that they had additional support when needed. So I mean that was real exciting in and of itself, and it was nice to be able to provide the kind of giveaways there so that people had that with them. We wanted to make sure that they had some things like, hey, here's a lanyard, here's a pen. Make sure if you need to call us, this is where you can reach out. So I think a lot of the feedback came early on, and we engaged a lot of students at that point in time. And again, from all those very diverse populations. And I think one of the key things that kind of came out of it was really it was about student engagement and student empowerment, empowering them to kind of I hate to use the word because I hate the words adulting, right? We're educators. That's it's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have one more poll that I'll ask that we throw up now. While we're answering that poll, I wanted to get your take, Dave, on any advice that you would give to colleges considering the AI sort of avenue of getting support, but then also the outsourcing of IT. It can be having additional resources outside of on campus can be kind of a touchy subject, frankly,
Sure.
for a lot of institutions. So when
Mhm.
you look at, the way that you guys implemented AI and then also, the non-campus based help,
Mhm.
what advice would you give out and any last words on how it went?
Yeah, sure. I think definitely it's worthwhile. And having been in IT for 30 plus years, it's the one group we're ops, right? It's the one group that unfortunately gets hit almost the hardest every time there's cuts, right? The first we're cutting places that aren't they're cost centers, and IT always seems to have the layoffs. So it's always kind of that struggle between, hey, you need support, but it's costing the entity money, so we have to cut back. You're always you're always struggling for staffing resources, and anything that you can do to augment that, whether it's you're bringing on short-term staff. I'm thankful to have some student staff. I just got some interns now that we've got a program going there, so it just excites me to have that opportunity. But then you've got this other entity that's really helping us out and really shouldering a lot of the burden so that we can focus a lot more hands-on and directly with those students.
Awesome. Um, For those that are, I want to be mindful of time. We've got about 3 minutes left. Any questions at all, please feel free to put them either in the chat or the Q&A. We do have one follow-up from Manny in the chat that I wanted to address. And Dave, not to put you on the spot, but he's asking specifically about outside of password reset and things like that, what is sort of the top kind of drivers in your chatbot? You said that you dove occasionally into that question explorer page. What are sort of getting the top billing for questions for you all?
I think a lot of it also, and thank you for the question, Manny. People are also looking at other resources on campus. It's, how do I sign up for classes? Financial aid, obviously a big one, right? So having a little bit of information to refer them over to those departments to help them out. And it's definitely something we're looking at expanding the capabilities, and not just within IT, but potentially on campus with other departments, because we see this as a great tool. I know other departments on campus are also struggling with resources and being able to service a very large population. So again, anywhere that you can find those resources, take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And then the second part of Manny's question was, what's being escalated typically? And I think you talked about some of the hardware and unique needs that you guys have because of the Wi-Fi devices and loaner laptops.
Yes.
Are there any other items besides that and the password pieces that get sort of consistently escalated?
No, it's primarily the password. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes there are actually issues that are outside the scope of the student support. So, for example, we had an issue where there was a licensing problem with some of our devices. They couldn't use the Microsoft product. So that had to be escalated to my full-time IT staff. It was an issue that was internal. So we are seeing some of that. So it has a little bit of bleed over there.
Yeah. And when that one came in, did
Mhm.
you guys, was there enough information between the initial call with BlackBeltHelp and sort of the escalation that you sort of went, hey, we can see what's wrong here and we can figure this out without having
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
restart this conversation with the user?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's
it was circling back with them, letting them know that this is what the issue is. Thank you for bringing it up. We're working on it, and then once we had a resolution, letting them know whether I think we actually had to get hands on with their device to make it to force it to connect, but we were able to resolve it and then resolve it for the campus at large.
yeah, so there's a situation where, even though you ended up with an escalation, you ended up saving time in the end as well, because you had enough information to sort of know exactly how to tackle that and avoid
Correct.
the troubleshooting side of it. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, we are at time, and that was the last question that we had queued up. I wanted to say thank you to College Buys. We appreciate the time. If there are other questions or follow-ups that we can answer, please do not hesitate to reach out.